Hello! Today I'm going to talk about white paints. In previous parts we already covered Acacia Senegal gum with wax and without wax. And this time we'll speak about glycerin paints. If you're not sure what that means, go to the first video to see all the differences. As in the previous video, I'm going to go over a few criteria. Line work, coverage with a white brush, sponge coverage, line work over another paint, blending with another color using a brush. I'm also going to check sponge blending, how white paint behaves as a background, and on the real skin. At the end of the video, I'm going to do one more sample with each paint and powder it. Then I'm going to do a stress test to see how the paint rubs out. I'm going to do it on powdered and non-powdered samples. And please remember, if I speak too fast, you can turn subtitles on or slow down the video in the options. Before we start, please like, subscribe and click the bell button to know when I post. I make a variety of time lapses, makeup tutorials and product reviews. So if that's what you enjoy, this is the channel for you. As usually, first I'm going to prepare my background. At the bottom there is going to be a metallic background. Metallics are normally softer and they will allow us to see the blending better. The dark blue one is a regular color and is going to work as a background for white line work. I'm starting with Superstar White. Generally glycerin paint are better for backgrounds and I'm mostly using Superstar White for that. And still it can pull out quite nice lines. Normally for more precise work I would use line white, but this can do lines no problem. Opacity with a flat brush is amazing. Sponging is also very good. When it comes to sponging and blending two colors together, it blends easy but not too fast, which means the stencil work would work very well with this paint as well. I didn't have any problem with liner. Line work over another paint also works well and it starts blending just a little bit at the end, but still it's pretty decent. When I don't reload the brush, it starts mixing straight away, which is good for blending work straight on the body. I love how this paint works as a background. Here it doesn't mix, so it's easy to go over. Here I pick up a fresh paint from time to time and the colors stay nice and crisp. On real skin, paint works equally well. It is very opaque and it's relatively easy to change the thickness of the line, although it's better for the backgrounds. This paint is very soft and very easy on skin. It is so easy to load, to blend, and that's why it's one of my favorite paints to use for body art. Now we're starting Superstar Line White with line work. And this paint is one of the first ones that I go to. Line work is even easier than with a Superstar White. Great opacity with a flat brush. Sponging is very opaque, easy to do. It is so easy to speak positive about this paint because I work with it about 2 years now. I've been sponsored by Superstar for World Body Painting Festival in 2019 and since then I was working with this paint all of the time and I really love it. It is good for sponging, good for mixing, but also works very well with line work even over the other paint. And on the other hand, it blends so well on the body when I want to mix the paint straight there. Since line white it's supposed to work for lines, you can see here that it does the job perfectly. So easy to do thin lines or thick lines, vary the thickness, whatever you want to do with this paint you can do. Superstar Skull is very similar to Superstar White. Although it is off-white color, I often use it for the items that I want to paint white, but then later I want to add some highlights, even lighter with white color. The color is so strong and opaque that you still think that it's white until you put the white straight next to it. Line work, liner, flat brush, sponging, everything works very well. Paint is loading very fast, it's opaque and it's very easy to apply. Works well over another paint but blends easily when needed and also works well as a background. It is easy to make different lines on my skin. No problems with changing lines from thicker to thinner. By the way, if you like one-stroke technique or you would like to learn it, there is a Facebook group for you which is called One Stroke Beauty. You can find a lot of inspiration there, or you can show your work. There is also a special chart for you at the top of the group where you can find artists who inspire the whole world with their one-stroke designs. You can tick all the artists that inspire you, or you can add your own one if they are not there. I bought Ruby Red paint specifically for this review. I haven't heard much about this paint before, so I was very impressed with its opacity. I like the line work very much, how the flat brush work. I like the sponging. It is very easy to load the brush and it's mixing quite fast. When going over another color, it was blending a bit too fast. As you see here, white is a bit bluish. Maybe I should have loaded it a bit better and it would be better on the other paint. On the other hand, as a background, it was working perfectly. As well as on my arm, it is easy to go from thick to thin, and although it is a glycerin paint, I still easily can use it for line work. The only negative experience with this paint is that I bought it in a very small container. I think it was 2 grams or something like this. The paint was placed in a very thin, flimsy plastic, and it was very difficult to pick up the paint because of its size, but overall it was picking up very nicely. I had quite a few FAB paints before, but I never had white, so I had to order it specifically for white paint review. Although it is made in the same factory as the Superstar, I still decided to make this separate sample as it is a different brand. FAB also has skull and line white color, but at the moment when I realized it was too late, I placed the order already for the first paint and the postage is so expensive, so I decided just to stay with line white only. So what can I say about the paint itself? I really like it. Line work is amazing, also opacity of a flat brush and a sponge is very good. Great blending, but also with a sponge, not too fast. That means stenciling would work perfectly. It's easy to pick up paint from the pot. The paint itself is smooth and even, and when painting on my arm it was very easy to go to thick and to thin line, no problem with variations. With Snazaroo, the line work is nice and opaque. With a flat brush it also works nice. The color is strong. While sponging, the color is strong and it's not blended with underneath layer. So I suppose stenciling would work really good with this paint. It's also not blending when painted over another color. Liner brush is crisp and sharp. With a flat brush over another paint, it blends rather slowly. It also works well as a background and with the liner brush. Overall, I'm quite pleased with Snazaroo, but with one condition. To receive the proper opacity, it takes so long to load the brush. If you use less water or don't take enough time to mix it well, it will be more translucent and won't look as good. If we speak about line work on the real skin, it works well. You can easily change lines from thick to thin and there is no problem with that. I was trying Smiffy for the first time and I wasn't very excited about this paint. It takes a while to load the brush and even then it doesn't have enough opacity for me. And when it dries it becomes even more translucent. The same was happening with a line brush and a flat brush. When it came to sponge, it was really hard to load on a sponge. The paint was going into the sponge, but it wasn't going out of the sponge. It was feeling like I was painting with a gluey paint. When sponging over another color, it didn't blend at all. With line brush, I'm not sure whether it was blending or it was just that translucent, so you could see the paint underneath. With a flat brush over another color, it gives out the color that's in the brush first, and then there's nothing left and it starts smudging. When I was going to check how the paint works as a background, I found out that the paint is still wet. Maybe I loaded too much paint with the sponge as it wasn't loading well. I considered whether I should wait for it to dry, but I decided not to wait, because when you paint on the part you don't have time to wait. After all, the paint worked well as a background and it didn't mix with underneath layer. On the arm it was possible to change from thick to thin, but then line work overall wasn't very comfortable as it was feeling a bit dry, even after spending quite a lot of time on loading the brush. Eulenspiegel is taking a bit longer to pick up the paint on the brush, but it's not very bad. The opacity is good, but it feels like the paint goes not very even and we can see some smudges of the paint, although we will see the end result when it dries. When sponging over another paint it doesn't blend, but it is blending with a line brush over another color. Liner works without problems. With the flat brush it blends straight after you touch another color. And it works well as a background. When painted on my skin, it can do thin lines and it can do thick lines, but it feels a bit dry, which makes the change a bit more difficult. I wouldn't say that line work is one of my favorites, but it is manageable. And also it feels like after drying, the paint became a bit more translucent. To be 100% sure, you can check with the photo at the end. This paint is not intended for line work. It's very hard to make the point with a line brush, but with a flat brush and with a sponge it's very creamy and intense. The paint is also very fast to load on the brush or on the sponge. It's very thick and creamy and feeling like half melted ice cream. It starts to blend fast even with a sponge and very noticeable with a line brush. The same happens with a flat brush. This paint is so thick that even liner doesn't work very well. If we speak about line brush over another paint, when it dries it blends even more into the background color. After some time it still feels a bit wet, but I'm still going over with another paint. I think it blends a little bit, but still doesn't look that bad. Although this paint is not suited for line work, I always keep a pot of this paint for the Halloween makeovers. It lays very well on the skin as a background, it feels very comfortable on the skin, and the color is very strong. From my experience, it does require the powder, otherwise it will just smudge on your face. And as you see, it's really hard to make lines on my arm. Okay, you probably noticed that on the card it says Kryolan Aqua Color, but also underneath it's written Funky Foxes. I found Funky Foxes when I already bought all of the paints and I started recording taking the samples. Then I wanted to find the maker of these paints, and in one document I found the Kryolan brand mentioning Funky Foxes. So I wrote the email to Kryolan asking about Funky Foxes, and I was really surprised to receive an email back saying that this is the same paint. I couldn't believe that it was as easy as that, so I wrote an email back confirming do they have the same ingredients, and I received the email yes, they do have the same ingredients. The long story short, I decided not to buy another paint and trust the manufacturer. At this point I already took all of the samples and didn't want to go through all of the process again. So if you try the Kryolan Aqua paint and Funky Foxes, can I ask you for a huge favor? To write in the comments your own opinion, whether they really feel like the same paint. I'm sure that the other viewers will appreciate your effort if you write down your opinion. The paint feels very thick and smooth, it loads well, and line work is, I would say, manageable. It's not very easy to do, but it is working. The sponge is very easy to load. The paint is very soft and opaque. It blends a little bit when you go over another color. When going over with a line brush, it does blend a bit, but not too much. Liner works okay. With a flat brush over another color and blends very fast. When I was checking this paint as a background, it was already dry, but it felt a little bit damp. Regardless, it was working very well as a background. The line work on my arm is the same as on the rubber. It is not the best, but it is manageable. I think this paint works really well as a background. I would definitely keep it close during the Halloween season. Mehron has a nice texture, it is not thick, but it still makes a very nice and opaque lines. It is easy to do line work with it, and also pleasant and even lines with the flat brush. Sponge work also nice and opaque, blending just a little bit at the end. When painting lines over another paint, it blends gently. The same with the flat brush, it starts to blend evenly. Liner brush works very well, and it also works well as a background. It is easy to do line work on the arm. It changes easy from thick to thin, although I think that for line work it is easier to use wax-based paints. I wonder what do you think about this paint? I still tend to use it more as a background, although the line work is quite good. And during the busy event, I don't think I would be too much disappointed if I would have to use this paint. Graftobian has a very nice consistency, very thick and very high opacity. The line work is not very easy but manageable. Flat brush works very well, it is very opaque. The same with sponge. The paint is very easy to load on the brush or on the sponge. When doing line work over another paint, it starts to blend gradually. Liner is okay to use, although it's not the best. When going with a flat brush over another color, it blends very fast. After some time, it still leaves a little bit of color on the finger, so I would say this paint is good to use as a background, but you would need to powder it first. Here, without powder, it still works well, just feels a little bit wet when touching. You can do line work, you can change a little bit from thick to thin, but it's much harder than using the wax paints. I will definitely keep this paint for the full face coverage, because it's very soft and pleasant for skin. I found about Mikim only after I've done research about white paint. I had to order this paint from America, although it is made in Europe. This is another paint that I tried for the first time and I was really impressed. It is easy to pick up from the box, it's very opaque, probably not the best for line work, but looks very nice as a background and easy to go with a flat brush as well as the sponge. Sponge is actually not blending much with underneath layer. Line brush over another color blends, but not very fast. With flat brush it blends well, but very gradually. Background still feels a little bit damp, but it doesn't leave any residue and it works well as a background. So this is the other paint that I really like, but would rather use as a background for my covers when I have to paint all the face with the same color or to blend just a few colors together. Then to powder it and only then to use line work if you need to. There is one more thing that I love about this paint. It is the container that this paint came in. In my opinion, all the solid colors or bigger splits should be using these containers. They are beautiful, they're transparent, they're good height and they feel like they're quite sturdy. I think my face painting kit would look so beautiful having these nice squares. Now we're going to see how these paints are looking together, comparing to each other. So here's a normal photo of all of these paints. I'm starting to click in photos for you to see the differences better. You can pause at any moment and analyze all of the differences yourself. And we're back to the normal non-changed photo. At some point I wanted to make one more test for all of these paints. As I already said, I painted the additional sample with white and then powdered it. I wanted to include additional painting over the sample with the darker color to see how the white paint behaves as a background after it has been powdered. But then I realized they all work the same because they have been powdered, and I actually paint over the powder, not over the paint. Because I already started painting over the samples, I thought I'll just mention it to you so you wouldn't wonder why is this blue paint is painted and I'm not mentioning anything about this. I'm going to start a stress test to see how paints react on rubbing. Obviously, I'm going to use a separate sponge for each paint. With one side of the sponge, I'm going to go over non-powdered, which is at the bottom, and the powdered sample, which is at the top. Starting with the powdered sample, I'm going to do 10 times for each. And again, I wanted to emphasize that these samples might not be very reliable, as I was working by hand. It would be better to use a special machine with a certain press. I have a next batch of paints. I couldn't fit them all in one screen, so I divided them in two parts. Ooh, you can see that Kryolan and funky boxes cannot be used without powder. They start smudging straight away. I'm repeating the process, adding 10 more times. And I have to say that after 20 rubs, nothing has really changed. That's again the second part of the paints. This part is a bit different, so there is more happening now. By the way, if you're on Instagram, pop into one of my accounts to say hello. I do arts and crafts, face painting, makeup, or healthy food and travel. Okay, to the previous 20 we're going to add 10 more. And again, not much happened. Maybe I just a little bit on ruby red powdered sample, which is very strange. Probably I just pressed a bit too much. And also on FAB unpowdered sample, there was a little bit less paint. If you look at the previous pictures, you'll notice this. And then I think it starts to rub out when it's little amount of paint. And again, start in the second part. This time I'm going to add 15 more rubs to each sample. And now I'm going to add last 15, and this will be it. Okay, let's talk a little bit about the first part of the paint. I don't think that any of them will need powder, because as you see, there's not much difference. You can see that ruby red has wiped a little bit, but I think I was just pressing a bit stronger. You cannot really see what's happening with Superstar Skull because of its color. FAB, as I mentioned, there was a little bit less layer of paint there, and maybe that made an impact on this sample. Let's look at the second part of the paints. The most differences we can see is on Smiffy, on Kryolan and Graftobian. Although when powdered Kryolan was looking very good, it hasn't changed much. If you haven't worked with Kryolan, you might think that this is not a very good paint, but actually it's one of my favorite to use on sugar skulls during the Halloween season. Not for the children, rather for adults, and I'll tell you why. This is the paint which has the smoothest strokes, and it has the most even surface. Normally children won't notice if the paint on their face is very smooth, but many adults do look if everything is perfect. But liking Kryolan for that, it doesn't mean that I don't like the other paints. Mikim is the one of the paints that I really liked, although I tried it only once when it just came. And I've tried Grimas and Graftobian before on the adult face, and they also look very good. For the full face coverage, I also quite like Superstar White. Here you can see part 1 and part 2 all together. At the top there is a powdered sample, at the bottom there is non-powdered sample. And just the same here, I'm tweaking the photos so you can see more differences, because sometimes it's really hard to notice them with the normal light. I also wanted to mention about the consistency of the paint. Please note, I'm not speaking about the intensity of the color. The intensity we already covered in the previous samples. Here I just want to mention how thick or how thin the paint is when you're loading. The consistency of Superstar Line White or FAB Line White is very close to wax paints. Then it goes Superstar White, Superstar Skull and Ruby Red and Mehron. They are still not cloggy and the paintbrush still holds a nice point with these paints. Snazaroo and Eulenspiegel, they are quite similar to Superstar Ruby Red and Mehron, but it takes more time to load the brush with the proper consistency paint. Next goes Kryolan, Funky Foxes, Grimas, Graftobian and Mikim. These paints are very thick and they look like half-melted ice cream. They are not good for line work, but they are amazing for the background color. They dry much longer, especially Kryolan or Funky Foxes. For these paints it is good to use a powder, then they are instantly dry and you can go over with the line work. Smiffy, in addition to being quite thick, it's also gluey. After today's test with glycerin-based paint, I just confirmed my opinion that glycerin-based paints are better to hold to the skin. If you are watching the second part with wax-based paints, you can clearly see by the stress test that rubbing wax-based paints after 30 times, you can clearly see the difference. With glycerin paints, it's not that obvious. Even after 60 rubs, you could still see that they are holding to the rubber. But then wax-based paints are drying faster and the lines are cleaner. Well, I feel like I'm starting repeating myself, so I'll just stop here. If you think that this video will be useful for you, give me a thumbs up and subscribe if you haven't subscribed yet. Please do remember to ask questions, because if you write this question in the comment, I will come back to this at some point. Let me know if I missed anything or you would like to see something else, something more of this. I'm very open to your comments, to your suggestions, and it's very important for me to hear your voice, to know what you're looking for. I hope these reviews will help you to understand better the white paints, the consistency, when you can use them, and choose a proper one for your perfect party. Thank you very much for watching, and I'll see you in my next videos. Bye!